So if you've watched any of my previous videos, you may have noticed that I've done a guide on Archeage before. And that's because I have a lot of experience in the Archeage community, and that I've played the game quite a bit. And I have a lot of friends who are still in it or who are still following the news about Archeage, and are kind of bringing back to me information about what's happening there. And the big thing happening in Archeage right now is the release of this new Archeage Unchained. Archeage Unchained is supposed to be a version of Archeage that solves the problems that ruined the previous versions of Archeage. And while I don't think that it necessarily completely falls short of that promise, I don't think it necessarily is quite the savior that people are claiming it is either. So I'm going to give a quick review over what I think of the changes that have been announced based on my previous experience in the Archeage community, as well as what I would do to get ahead if you were to decide to play Unchained. So the change that's coming in Unchained that seems to have the most fanfare surrounding it is the fact that they're going to be removing Apex from the game and launching it as an entirely separate game where there's no connection to anywhere that you can buy Apex to get ahead. And the cash shop isn't supposed to give any kind of stat advantages. It's just supposed to be purely cosmetics this time. And there's just no way to spend money on the game to progress faster. And people are saying, well, Archeage's problem is that Archeage is pay to win, and they're fixing the pay to win by making these changes. And because of that, the game is just going to be 100% better, and there won't be the problems that we've had in previous versions of Archeage. And I think my response to people who are making those kind of claims is that pay to win is a problem within Archeage, and definitely removing the pay to win aspect will improve the game a little bit, but I don't believe that it is the problem with Archeage. I think pay to win really is more of a minor problem that's exacerbated by a larger problem that really is what drives people's distaste for Archeage, whether they would admit to this being the main problem or not. And the problem that I see with Archeage is gear gap. There's a famous video online where someone is holding down a single key and shooting essentially a glorified auto attack spell. It's one of the most basic spells in the sorcery line. And he lifts up his keyboard in front of the camera with his finger on that one key, and you see him fighting and winning against multiple people at the same time. And this isn't like, a max level character that went out to like the first PvP zone. He's out in Diamond Shores, which is one of the high level PvP areas. So the people that he's fighting are max level characters, and he's able to defeat them with essentially a glorified auto attack, multiple of them at the same time. And I think that really encompasses the true problem within Archeage, which is that Archeage promotes itself as a PvP game. And while, yes, there's gear gap in pretty much every MMO, most games, be it Darkfall, Eve, the new releases such as Crowfall that are being under development, they don't give that level of power for having higher gear. Skill is more of a factor. So when somebody can essentially kill multiple people without using any of their player skill whatsoever, just based on their gear, I don't think anybody's really having fun there. Be that person earned that by grinding longer, or that person earned it by using better methods of leveling. I think that's the problem that Archeage has. So it's really discouraging to new players. And I think you're going to see that while early on, when nobody can pay their way past everybody else, everybody's going to have a lot more fun. I think you're still going to see, you come back to Archeage Unchained in a year or two, and new people trying to get into the game are still going to face the same battles that they're facing in regular Archeage, and it's really going to turn these people off to the game and destroy the chances of longevity that Archeage Unchained might have if it were to more directly address the gear gap issue rather than the pay to win issue. Now, in addition to dealing with Apex, they are making another change that I actually personally think is going to have a lot more impact than just the removal of Apex. And that is that they are making it a bannable offense to have more than 3 accounts per player. And so why that is important is because of the labor system within Archeage. Generally, when you're playing Archeage, you have to balance profit per labor, which is, how much labor you spend for each action that you do and how much money you get back from that, versus the amount of time that it would take you to burn the labor. So like if you're doing something that allows you to very quickly burn your labor and make some money, and you're getting poor profit per labor from it, then you're not really getting ahead as much as if you were to have absolutely maximized profit per labor, such as trading zone or packs, trading commerce packs in the most dangerous runs and the longest runs. That's your most efficient profit per labor. But then you get people who create, like, say, 20 accounts, and all of a sudden, instead of having a single labor pool, they have 20 labor pools, which means they can all of a sudden do these things that they can burn the labor very quickly and be done, on that character within like 10, 15 minutes and still be making decent profits because of the fact that they're doing it 20 times. So doing that allows them to outpace the people who would be doing really good profit per labor activities on a single character. And then the other thing is, if they have a really good rig, you'll even see people that will string up like 20 characters in this big train and move like 20 haulers worth of cargo packs at the same time. And those people are making huge profits that allow them to just explode in their wealth past other characters. And since there's very, very good high-end crafted gear that's arguably better than all the other gear, having that much money just gives you an incredible amount of power over other players. So if they actually are effective in keeping people to play only 3 accounts at a time, it really limits the damage that people can do. Now, that being said, I still don't think one player is going to be competitive against somebody with 3 accounts, but they'll be much more competitive, and everybody else, they'll be able to run 3 accounts instead of 20 accounts, which means that they can spend more time focusing on a smaller number of characters rather than just running these monolithic alt systems, which is really the meta of top-end players in regular Archeage. Now, probably beyond that, the biggest selling point to me about Unchained over regular Archeage is that they're going with a buy-to-play model rather than a subscription model. So you will pay $25 per account and then own that account for forever. And that account will do just as much labor generation as any other account. You don't have to keep a subscription going in order to generate labor at a decent rate and therefore be able to play the game effectively. You can just buy 3 accounts for $25 each, and that's as much spending as is required to be fully viable at the game for forever. So that's a huge bonus to people who really like Archeage but don't necessarily want to break the bank trying to be viable. Now, the one major disadvantage of Unchained over Legacy Archeage is that Unchained does have no free-to-play option. And so you're not going to be able to come into Unchained for free. You've got to pay the upfront cost at the door. And once you pay that cost, you can play for free forever. So I think what you may see happen within the Archeage community based upon what's happening with Unchained is I think most new players will either just directly buy Unchained or may use Legacy Archeage as like their free trial to see if they like the game, and then go with Unchained. I think you're going to see very few new players coming into Legacy Archeage after this point because of the fact that Legacy Archeage, you need like 20 accounts for $15 a month each to get you to a point that you can catch up with those players who have been there for forever and have ridiculously high gear score. Where with Unchained, they're going to become able to come in, buy the game 3 times, and then they're done. And that's like 5 months worth of subscription. So why not go that route unless you're already very established on Legacy? So I think you're going to see Legacy either have a huge drop in population over time, or they may have to review their subscription model and possibly lower the prices or increase what you're able to do with the free-to-play version. So to kind of wrap up on my thoughts on what I think of Unchained, I think that if you're either a new incoming player to Archeage or somebody who hasn't really built yourself up enough that you're very attached to what you've done on Legacy, Unchained definitely seems like a better game option than Legacy Archeage. However, if you're someone who's played Archeage in the past and you're tired of the gear gap problems and you're just tired of the general problems that Archeage has, it doesn't really address all of the root grievances with Archeage. So if you didn't like Archeage in the past, this probably still isn't the game for you. That being said, if you're coming in to this game on day 1, if you buy the pre-release of Unchained and you've got your 3 copies ready to go on day 1, I think you might find yourself staying competitive with people who have more playtime and of course more disposable cash for longer, because it does make progression a little bit more even, a little bit more fair. And it makes it so, you know, somebody who just comes in and knocks out a few of their vital dailies and burns all their labor is going to have a lot easier time keeping up with people that play 24/7 and spend a ton of money, because those people aren't going to have 20 accounts and they're not going to have any boost from Apex. So it definitely is going to make things a little bit more fair than it's been in the past, which should make the game a lot more interesting for a lot more. I also think it's very worth noting, depending on how long ago it was that you last played Archeage, that if you've played Archeage in the past and you've been trying to get obsidian gear or the crafted line such as Aenad, that there is a new type of gear that's been out for a year or two now called Hiram that is basically, rather than gold-driven gear, it's labor-driven gear. There's a bunch of untradeable pieces that you can use to build up this set of Hiram gear for yourself. And that gear is very much competitive gear. Somebody in a fully maximized set of Hiram is a powerful player. They're not going to just get absolutely obliterated by somebody in their Aranor or something. They're going to be a formidable force on the battlefield that people can't just run around and one-shot. So the addition of Hiram before Unchained, as well as the changes that they're making, should see a pretty interesting game coming out in the end. If you're going to be coming in day 1, burning your labor every day, doing your Hiram dailies and the other essential dailies that it takes to stay abreast with people, even if you don't have 24 hours a day to make sure that you're spending every labor point as efficiently as possible, going to every possible piece of content and just maximizing your progression to the greatest extent possible, you still may find yourself competitive with people who are doing those things. just simply doing a few dailies. So with all that being said, I think it's worth talking about at this point, what would you do if you've decided, I want to give Unchained a fair go and I want to really do my best to be effective in this game? What should I do in order to be viable within Unchained? So the first piece of advice that I would give to somebody who really wants to be successful in Unchained is that one account isn't sufficient. The people who are going to be up at the top are going to be people who not only have their primary account, probably that they're burning all their labor on getting their set of Hiram going, but then they're also going to have 2 additional accounts every day burning their labor to make money to spend on things like Luna gems to sock it into their Hiram gear, accessories, etc. There's still need for gold in order to progress in Archeage. So if you're splitting your main account's labor pool between making gold and progressing your Hiram, you're going to progress slowly on your Hiram, you're going to progress slowly on the thing that you need gold for. Where if you have your dedicated main putting everything into getting that Hiram up as fast as possible, and then 2 characters feeding all of their gold into supplementing every other part of your gear, you're going to advance much, much faster than somebody who's trying to do it from one account. The second piece of advice that I would give is that probably Hiram is going to be your best gear option, as I've been saying. Though if you go out there and you find the Hiram zones very difficult to farm, you're just camped out of those zones, a decent fallback may be dungeon gear, in particular library gear, is going to get you up to a competitive level fairly quickly. I would not fall back on crafted armor in Unchained, because crafted armor is only the best option over Hiram and dungeon gear if you have practically limitless amounts of gold. And nobody's going to have limitless amounts of gold because we're all going to be restricted to 3 accounts and we can't buy Apex. So you want to either do Hiram as your first choice, or you can't get the Hiram, you want to do the dungeon, but you don't want to focus on crafted gear early on. Now, like I said, with the gold progression, probably the first thing that I would be looking at is Luna gems, those that you're not getting through honor and such already. But then the other thing that I would be looking at is I would be looking at how do you intend to earn gold within Archeage. If you're going to be a farmer or a rancher, you probably need to be getting land that you can farm or ranch on. If you're going to be doing commerce, you probably want to start looking into trade carts or merchant ships. So you're going to want to invest some of your gold back into making more gold, but you don't want to invest so much of your gold back into making more gold that you're lacking the Luna gems to get out there and fight efficiently on the front lines. Because if you can't fight efficiently on the front lines, you're not going to be able to farm your Hiram as easily. If you're doing any more dangerous things that give higher money, like trade runs, you're not going to be able to fight off people trying to steal your packs as successfully. If you're trying to steal packs from other people, you can't get it done as successfully. So unless your intention within the game is just to be a character bearer and live in the safe zones, you do want to put a lot of your money early on into supplementing your gear beyond just what you're doing by farming the Hiram, so that you can be very strong in combat situations that you're thrust into. The next piece of advice I would give is that get an idea of how much time you are likely to be spending on Unchained per day, because what method of making gold you're going to use needs to be based on how long you'll be playing each day. If you have practically unlimited playtime, you're probably going to want to get into running packs through the more dangerous territories, doing the high risk, high reward runs to get the maximum amount of gold out of your playtime. But if you're, a college student, full-time work, whatever, and that's going to make it so that you can only play so much per day, you might want to focus, say, on processing and gathering resources, because you can get that done very quickly, and it's nowhere near as effective as running the best packs in the game, but it's a heck of a lot more effective than not burning your labor at all. So that's going to be the methods that you're going to go to at least hopefully stay in the same league as the people that are just going for absolute maximum profit per. Finally, I would say learn a bit about the different types of content in Archeage and kind of work it into your schedule as best you can, because you can actually make quite a bit of money through some of the events in the game, such as the Abyssal packs make quite a bit of money. You make a little bit of money when you run Thunderwing Titan. You can get quite a bit of money from the Kraken. And generally those methods of making money take either little labor or they take no labor in some cases. So that's definitely a way to stretch out your labor to the absolute maximum. And you want to be hitting 1 or 2 pieces of content at least if you're a fairly casual player, and as many pieces of content as you can be hitting if you're not a casual player, in order to get the most gold generation so that you have more gold to feed back into your gear. So that's pretty much my thoughts on this new Unchained development. If you're new to Archeage in general, you might check out the beginner's guide from this channel. It gives very general advice on how to choose a class if you're new to the game. If you're not new to the game, that probably isn't going to tell you much that you don't already know. I hope you guys tune in for more content later.